Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of Forbes Women, here with Forbes Breaking News. On Thursday, the Supreme Court rejected a challenge to the abortion pill Mifepristone. Here to explain exactly what that means is appellate attorney Jeff Lewis. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jeff, before we started recording, I was asking about all the specifics of this case and exactly what it means. So we had a unanimous decision here. What exactly did the Supreme Court decide today when it comes to Mifepristone access?
Well, in some sense, they decided nothing. They decided that a group of physicians who were pro life and didn't care for the use of this abortion pill don't have standing and shouldn't have the right to file a lawsuit challenging the use of this pill. So, in effect, the Supreme Court sided with the FDA, and this pill can continue to be prescribed to women seeking reproductive rights and abortion health care.
It can continue being used in the states that allow for abortion effectively.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Now, they rejected the case on standing. So does that mean the court did not say anything about the merits of mifepristone, or did they guarantee the use of mifepristone in perpetuity? What can we extrapolate here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. All nine justices did not get into the weeds of the merits of this case, didn't speak about whether there is any kind of right of women to receive this medication or the right of a state or the federal government to regulate this medication. The only thing the court decided on a 9-0 basis today was for someone to come into court and challenge the approval of this kind of medication. You have to be someone who's directly impacted. You got to be perhaps a woman who wants this medication or a doctor who actually prescribes this medication, but not a doctor who might have a religious belief or a pro life belief, but has no direct connection to this medication.
Now, we've both said it's unanimous, and I feel like we live in such a politically divided time. Can you talk about the significance of this being a unanimous decision? Is there significance to it being a 9-0 decision?
There's no legal significance whatsoever, but on the political side, it is possible the court is feeling the heat from the Dobbs decision, that some people have believed that the court may have lost some legitimacy by reversing decades long precedent in terms of Roe v. Wade, and that by dodging or failing to decide the core issue of this case and resolving it on standing grounds, the court is trying to preserve its legitimacy or preserve itself from attack.
Now, let's talk about the decision it released. I had heard from other people across corporate America that this case had implications for other drugs and the FDA's ability to approve drugs and for companies to put drugs on the market. Did the Supreme Court comment on the pharmaceutical industry writ large here?
No, it didn't. And it's funny. This is the kind of case where you would expect a footnote or a concurrence or a dissenting opinion commenting on the possible implications or broader applications of this beyond the abortion medication. And this court was very narrow and simply said these doctors or this group of doctors can't access the federal courts to challenge the approval of this pill.
That is very narrow. Something else that was really interesting in the days around the oral arguments is that we heard a lot about the Comstock Act, this 19th century law that, well, why don't you explain what the Comstock Act is, why we heard about it in oral arguments, and then I have a part two to this question.
Both people on both sides of the debate, pro-lifers and people who are for reproductive rights, have cited this case or this law, the Comstock Act, as a dormant and possible emerging challenge to access to reproductive health. And what the law says is you cannot use the U.S. mail to transport or transmit products or goods that Congress has deemed to be amoral. And pro-lifers will believe that the Comstock Act would apply to forbid the mailing of an abortion pill. And so people have long suspected that that law would be raised by a conservative Supreme Court in its abortion decision making.
And yet, was the word Comstock uttered today or in today's decision?
Everybody was looking for it. I didn't see it. It didn't come up. And it was a great opportunity to hint to future Supreme Court litigators where the court might be on that issue. Supreme Court wasn't touching that issue today.
Why do you think?
Well, it could be going back to my earlier comments that the court has taken a lot of heat and some attacks on its legitimacy by reversing decades old precedent in terms of Roe v. Wade. And perhaps they're playing it safe, especially with the looming election, and trying to decide the case on the narrowest possible grounds without creating any controversy.
Now, the court rejected the challenge to Mifepristone on standing. But what does this mean for other states that might want to issue their own challenges? Are there laws or are there cases on the books where we could see this issue come up again and again and again?
Well, I will say there is one still pending Supreme Court case on the issue of abortion in terms of a conflict between federal law and Idaho law on the question of stabilizing a patient who presents themselves at a hospital. So that decision is going to be coming in the next few weeks. And in terms of this specific issue and the abortion pill, you could see a group of physicians filing a new lawsuit against this pill following the directive of today's opinion. Today's opinion said you didn't have declarations from doctors that said A, B, or C. You should have had those kinds of declarations suggesting how these doctors would be impacted by the use of this medication, how a patient could present themselves at an ER, and how a doctor could have to treat somebody for something that is against their religious beliefs. That wasn't present in today's lawsuit, but you can bet in the next one, the lawyers will pay attention and follow the dictates of today's opinion.
I was just about to ask, was that providing instructions for the next round of litigation?
It was a roadmap. It was a clear roadmap of assuming this majority stays the majority of what the Supreme Court would look for to give standing and recognize a challenge on this basis.
So, Jeff, what I'm hearing is despite today's unanimous decision regarding Mifepristone, the matter of Mifepristone access is not quite settled.
Absolutely not. The people who are on the side of reproductive rights can breathe a sigh of relief that temporarily, for a few months or perhaps a year or more, the Supreme Court is not going to do anything to block access to this abortion medication. But this challenge will come back to the Supreme Court eventually.
Ooh, what else should we expect from this Supreme Court when it comes to abortion access? Are you watching anything else here?
Well, I am looking out for that later decision involving the Idaho law and the federal law in terms of the conflict between a physician's duty to stabilize a patient when they come into an ER and Idaho's law criminalizing people who perform abortions. There is that conflict. I'll be interested to see how the Supreme Court resolves that. And in addition to that, I would look for more cases like this to be filed specifically in Texas, where they have friendly judges to this kind of case, uh, following the dictates of today's decision and putting down more specific causation of how this pill and this medication impacts doctors who are plaintiffs in this case.
Any other final words for us on this very important matter?
No, I would just say that today the Supreme Court really did nothing. It's the status quo, and a decision will be made another day on the merits of whether or not this abortion pill will continue to be accessible.
Jeff Lewis, appellate attorney, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down what happened at the Supreme Court today. We really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you.